Ta-da! And welcome to Josef's Model Railway and Toy Room. Thank you so much, as always, for joining me. Just a little bit of housekeeping. You don't need to like, follow, or subscribe to any of the videos I put out there. Just put them out there where I can. Have a holly jolly great time doing so. Well, we're back to this shed again. It's hard to believe, are we ever going to get rid of it? It's like when we're on the petroleum depot, video after video after video. There is a lot that goes into it, and basically you're seeing this backwards because basically, if you can see it on the camera, you've pretty much got the end product of pretty much where we are now, give or take. So we were busy in an early one getting concreting. Then we came in with the drain, and then we came in with the crane. Now we're just going to finish some basic, well, for the most part, we're just going to get this thing sort of landscaped and looking a little more like it's in the right spot. That's what we're going to be doing today, covering a few tips and techniques to get us there and what it's all about. Mistakes, of course, plenty along the way. It wouldn't be a video without them. But we're making good progress here. And I think it's just important to say I'm going to return not too far away with another video, and we'll probably title it something like detailing, where I'm going to come along and just do a little bit of finer bits and pieces and adding what we need, like the little machinery and stuff like that to the area. But this one strictly today, strap on your scenic cement, your static grasses, your dirt, all of that, because that's what we're going to be doing now, is just getting a little bit more detail into the shed. It's a pretty simple one, some great results. I'll show you how we got the back end here done of where we're meeting the canal to the back of the shed. It was always going to be a bit of a mixed bag, that one, but I think it's looking okay at the moment. So let's get stuck in and check out what this is all about. I've just taken some more of that kit, and we'll just put a little piece here because we've got the bend in the track. I won't keep it going, but we'll just put a little bit there. And I thought I was going to have one of these. I wanted two of these, but I've got one. So at least if I can at least have one somewhere, we'll get to it. Why I say, when you say, but there's a left and right hand, you've got no problems. Well, a little bit of a problem. As I took one of them off of the kit, as you can see, I've done a whoopsie here. We can probably fix it, but that's where I just left it. But at least I've got the two to carry on with to build another one. So let's try and put this kit together. I'm not really into these fiddly ones, but here we go. So for that concrete slab, we're just going to use a little bit of cork cut up and some scrap bits here to just lift this up to get to the right height. We're creating quite an optical illusion. You'll see in just a moment. Let's get that weighted down and glued into place. It's looking quite good. Now we're going to come along and take a little small piece of concrete slab that we just knocked up. You saw actually earlier in that demonstration in that previous video. If you haven't seen it, there's a link to it here. Real concrete, real fast. There was a great big disaster you didn't just see there, where I had a 600ml Mountain Dew bottle explode all over everything. You might not believe it, but there it is. We're putting our cabinets we've talked about in an earlier video down. Of course, we had a lot of trouble and we've broken it off, as you can see, and trying to get it to sit back. And I have the bottom of them filled up with cables as well, so you get a really good look when you come down onto it. But again, we're just dumping sand and PVA around, and just this is basically the base layer here.
All right, let's remove this. Adding a little detail, decided there was a bit of a ditch there, so we're going to try and create a bit of a puddly dam looking thing here. But it's literally just a bit of PVA with some grey talus, the slightly bigger stone. Then we'll bring in our other bits of stone to finish this area up, and a little bit of maybe the realistic water and some, I don't know about reeds. I'll probably just use a bit of static grass lifting up in corners. See how we go. But because there's still a base of PVA underneath, this whole area is still going to take some time. It's going to need another day of drying minimum. And I ran out of glue.
Woodland Scenics realistic water. This is the best thing, I reckon. Two things I'd recommend: buying the base tint that you need, the undercoat, and then the realistic water, and then you can tint it up accordingly. But it will shrink, so if you're using a surface, you may need something
If it's a porous one, you're going to need the undercoat to seal it. Now, back to making a series of little, well, I guess like landings for our, not a jetty, but obviously the little dock. I wasn't going to do this step, and if you look, it's not like I did the other side. It's not quite as good as Percival's landing. I'm literally gluing the sections together as one. There's not a frame underneath it. But as usual, we'll just take a quick bit of inspiration, and this is what we've got. The same procedure though, we're going to check it fits, and then we will scribe it up with a knife or a blade or whatever you're using there. And then we're just going to, as usual, add a little bit of watercolor to it. I usually just add a little bit of a sort of a white and a bit of a gray. And then as we sort of scratch back on it, we're starting to create that textured aging of those planks on the dock here. So let's carry on now. Let's get our blade and start to carve out some detail if we can. So just a light few scribes across a few planks, different directions, mix it up as need be, and we'll just carry on for a little bit here. Once we've done that, I'll just touch back with a little bit of the watercolors, a few different browns and grays, and just strike them and streak them in some little spots as required. Once that's done, I usually take a sponge, and I'm basically just using the sponge very lightly. You can see tapping and rolling it just to balance and soften out the entire image. Back to our favorite Vallejo wash, and this is what's really going to just sort of tie everything together. Again, on the sponge, sometimes diluted. Usually, in my case, I usually am using the darker one. The lighter one is fantastic, but sometimes I'm looking for a bit more of a dramatic appearance. That's why we're going to blob a bit onto the sponge here. Whoops, didn't mean to squirt it out quite like that. Oh well, it is what it is. And of course, once it starts to dry, you're left with a really good finish. And as I've always said, if it starts looking a bit wrong and a bit dark, don't panic. You can always compress it out with the sponge a bit, and it'll start looking quite good.
We're doing this because those little hairline fractures that I cut out with the blade, this is where this should come into its own. Not quite what I wanted, but it will do.
And time is of the essence, and I've needed to make another one to finish it up. So just straight out into the sun, soaking up the quick drying as fast as I can. Same weathering, and there you go. It's filling in quite nicely. The bit you can't see going on in the background, I'm creating a little bit of a retaining wall just where that concrete is to sort of separate it. And then the downside of it will sort of be as a bit of a stormwater runoff there. That's what I'm trying to achieve. The next bit we're going to be doing, and once it was in place, I then came with some smaller little offcuts and made it look like the little pegs that are holding that retaining wall up there. It will be looking good, I promise you. And then let's come back over here, and really all we're doing is now joining the two sections together of where our concrete was and this boardwalk to make it look like it naturally joins together. Before we can fine tune it, we need to sort of backfill because there's some substantial gaps there. So we're just going to do that now. Quick spray down with the wet water, and then the PVA we're going to bleed in now with an eyedropper. You did see a bit of paper towel and some bubble wrap back there just from the overspray of the wet water. It is just water, it dries, but you don't want it to try and disturb too much of the other stuff going on around it, especially with our turnout motors and things like that. Let's just take a quick break now to smell the roses. I drove past this in Maryborough the other day and couldn't help but turn down the street to say, what's going on here? It's a beautiful pedestrian crossing across the railway line, and one of the residents has decided in that little gap to plant some flowers. And what a truly wonderful thing to drive by. I know if I lived in one of those houses on either side, I would do the same thing. And if council get angry at me, so what? I mean, if that's just something to make your day a little brighter, why not? Again, back to the black wash now, which we're just going to dust over this little piece of the laser cut timber for the retaining wall bit. And we're just going to really put it on quite thick, let it just drink in. Also, just with the rest of the brush, I'll just put it around the edges of the concrete there, just trying to soften that out.
Here's an interesting situation. In the right angle, it looks like there's been new tin that went over that shed roof. Of course, there's not. It's just a Ziploc, one of those airtight bags with the a figure in it that's going to be going somewhere down there. Now, at the moment, I just wanted to bring your attention. This is actually starting to turn out pretty well, what we're up to here. And if you look up at this angle, it may well look like you sort of, these two tracks are on a different level, because the illusion is that they are. In fact, if we come down with the camera, you may well even detect what I'm talking about. It looks like the other one drops down because of the landscaping. But the interesting thing is, I thought I'd put a little level in here. They're exactly the same height. It's one of those optical illusions. I think it's turning out really, really well. We've got to get some water going on in here next.
Back to the realistic water now, and just to pay attention, because I don't have an undercoat of that appropriate color, so just something to be aware of for the future here. What I do is I do put a layer down. I also tease the edges out with a brush, but that's sort of where we're going to get the bigger puddle around those rocks. What I'm actually going to do is, there's some in there, and I've brushed it all around to create an undercoat. It's going to stay in there for the next 3 to 4 months, maybe till Christmas or whenever the next running session is. And prior to that, I'm going to mix a bit of tint back up in the next layer, and then I'll bring in a final coat on it. Because what happens is it will drink in and there will be some shrinkage. So if I've learned anything with using the product as good as it is, it needs time.
No, you haven't really missed much. We have really done nothing, except I've just been filling in some excess ballast that needed to happen and creating a bit of a shoulder to where the concrete's going to meet up. We've still got a little more to do in those key sections, but at the moment we're going to come in and start to build the dirt final coating around before I can get a little bit of static grass just in detailing around it. So let's get you in for that. Now, this actually has only been done a couple of hours ago with our PVA and the ballast to sort of bring a bit of height here and there. In the next situation, what we're going to do is, it's still very much drying, but I put a heater across it just to speed it up. So it's not too bad. And what we're doing is just adding to the top of it to get a bit of that texture. So this is the story. Though you'll see a few bits I'm going to build up as I'm going to come along doing this, so we'll probably speed the footage up. But basically, this is just our finely sifted dirt that we have here, and we're going to spread our PVA glue out with a brush to get it exactly where we're going to need it now. And we're going to literally make it look horrible and dump all this dust over it. But don't despair, because then we're going to be back to suck it up and clean it up, and then to some static grass, and we should be really starting to get some good looking vibes. Let's grab that brush and some glue. Just going to use the same two brushes. Going to use a bigger one here just to fan out the larger areas quicker, and then a more detailed one for where I really want it to be. Let's just get it on and start working with it, particularly near that concrete. I needed to try and build it up a bit. We've still got a little bit of trunking that's going to come back our way here.
Quickly get that magic tool we know as our fingers, just quickly run them over the track. I don't want any glue or anything on there. It comes off easy enough, but while it's still in a liquid form, just wipe it off as necessary. Let's get started. You can probably see I have a piece of paper there. I usually do when I'm doing this. It's mostly just to control where it's going in some areas. I don't need it jamming up point motors and things like that. So often I'm just using it as a bit of a guide. It's not official, but I could just sort of manipulate it cleanly and away from the mechanical track bits and things like that. Again, this is all dirt we've talked about in an earlier video, taken straight out of the ground. Then I roast it in an oven, and then I sieve it down. So what actually happens is it's very granular at that point, but exceptionally fine. So as messy as this is actually going to look, when we come along with the vacuum cleaner and you go, oh, it's going to get in all my models. Well, not really. It's just going to sit there, and then I clean it and suck it straight up. The concern would be if you didn't clean it up afterwards and then start going around whizzing locomotives or turning fans or getting a breeze blowing, you've got big problems. But let's just keep dusting it along now like a magic fairy dust. Just a quick tickle with a brush, because for some reason I accidentally just dumped wet water across this. I have no idea. I thought it would help with drying, but that was the silliest thing I could do. Basically creating mud, but not in a bad way. Again, let it dry. Everything will be just fine. Just get it out of the key spots. I didn't really want it in with that brush, and we're going to be just fine here. Yes, let me just stick my big bazoo in here, get my hooter right into the right position and say to myself, these bits that look a bit darker where there's excess bleed going on with the PVA, let's just grab that container again and keep sprinkling a bit more dirt. You can see I've also removed the stocking on it. That's because the larger particles that didn't fall through are the bits we're now going to take and put on top. This really builds up and changes the texture in the area, because when you get outside and go somewhere, it's not always this most perfectly flat and perfect ground all the time. So this really does help, and when we bring in the vegetation, this really does change the elements up, and I highly recommend this. Right, let's suck it all up now. Flick that switch on.
Well, you can see the mistake I made. I've got no idea why I was spraying this water down just before I started. I guess it was just to break the surface tension up, which is a bit dumb, because then I was afraid I've undone everything. But that's why I've just grabbed that vacuum cleaner. We're going to leave it to dry, of course, but I just wanted to make sure that key sections haven't been damaged because of what I did. It is just dirt and a bit of water, and it's going to add some detail, but that's not quite how I wanted it to be. But as you can see, the greatest temptation is to start poking and fiddling at it. Don't do that. Just leave this to dry. Then you can come back with the vacuum cleaner and really give it a really damn fine tickle. The other thing as well is don't overthink it too much here. It does get dusty and it does make a mess. But once it's all dried out, this should reveal perfectly what we need. And then we can fill in those other gaps accordingly. This section here looks quite good. So I've always got the manual wet water here with the eyedropper.
And as always, my handy toolkit, wet water and a bit of PVA to manually put this down. We can be a bit more in control. This little Chinese container with the product in them, I have actually been using now for the past 2 years. Apart from topping up a little bit of glue and a little bit of wet water, just keeping it sealed like this, very handy when you need to get into it. So, yes.
It's just those the finer granules of dirt. Not the fine ones, but the ones that didn't go through the stocking, the slightly bigger one. I do want to just create a little something there. We don't want to use too much, otherwise that's going to bleed in all the wrong directions.
See, it's not all that bad once that vacuum cleaner sucks it all up. Now we're going to come in with the knock static grass glue, and we're going to do a bit of static grass, make it look rather patchy, and I'm going to do it a little bit backwards. Rather than putting the small stuff down first and then the big stuff, we're actually going to go backwards, doing it with big stuff in multiple layers. We're mixing up several types of dry farmland and grassy swamp. It's all 4 and 5 mils and a little bit of the burnt as well. And at the end, you see I just come in with a bit of the flock, which is usually what you put at the start. But I think this breaks this texture up a whole lot more here and really looks a bit more interesting, is really what we're going for. We're just going to correct the edges just here for a little bit with a little more of our pastels. We'll just grind down here. We're still not quite 100% here, as we're about to see a little more footage in just a moment. However, we are getting this to look a little more pleasing to the eye. Once we've got that down, we're just going to give it a quick tickle with a little bit of our fixative spray and carry on. And as always, just quickly wipe the top of the rails off there for that fixative spray. It's not the end of the world, but not a bad thing. And now we're going to glue down the base of the trunking to get started.
Just taking the grey, you can see what I've just done here. And I'm just basically carving what would be basically a trafficked walkway. So we're just going to brush this in now.
girls and boys, ladies and gentlemen, as always, that's going to do us for yet another video. I'd like to thank you so much for joining me on what we're up to here at the moment. And while it may not be finished, I think as opposed to what was there with that terrible airclay that I've still got in places here, this is starting to look a lot more feasible at the moment. Again, I'm probably not going to have a running session with the trains now until maybe another few more months with Christmas back on the hop again. We'll get it going, so it will certainly look good. We'll come back and see some detailing we're going to add to that, and I think seeing it done like that with some detail and a lovely locomotive or a few wagons or something passing by in the background is really going to set this thing apart. But for the minute, that's all I've got for you today. I'd like to thank you as always for joining me. Please do stay safe. We'll see you in the next one. Toodles!